Hello and welcome to the Matt and Phreds Speakeasy podcast. My name is Claire Turner and I run our little family business with my sister, our parents and the wonderful Matt and Phreds team, two of whom are running the podcast show. David Smith Jr. and Ed Gallyot will be chatting to some of the wonderful musicians who play at the club here in Manchester. They'll be discussing musical inspirations, songwriting techniques and hearing a little bit about what makes each of the musicians tick. If you can, please visit the Matt and Phreds website at mattandphreds.com. Phreds is spelt with a PH, and check out our online shop. There's loads of goodies to buy, of which money will go towards helping musicians who have lost all of their gigging income during this COVID-19 lockdown. So, without further ado, over to you, David and Ed. Enjoy the show.
Lovely indeed. Hello and welcome to another episode of Speak Easy, the Matt and Phreds podcast. My name is David Smith Jr. and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host and Copacabana, Ed Gallyot. How are you today, Ed?
I'm feeling very, very good. I'm feeling like Barry Manilow in the sun, withering away with a margarita. It's it's fantastic. And who have we got on the podcast this week, David? Who have we got? I'm excited, aren't we?
I'm very excited, to be honest, Ed. This is a particular, special favourite of mine. We've got Ben from Vipertime who's going to be talking to us about all sorts of stuff. We do get a bit distracted in this conversation, go off on a few tangents, but I'm sure the lovely listening public will enjoy it.
Worthwhile tangents, you know.
Definitely.
Not the sort of tangent where you'd visit a castle just off Whitby services. Not that type of tangent. It wouldn't make people that annoyed. It would be a very focused musical tangent.
Yes, indeed. We wouldn't want to cause that much unrest within our listenership.
And talking of rest, there's
oh, that's a segue.
I love that as a segue indeed. There's a lovely track underneath us, and it is by my very good friend Matthew from Blanket Fort, and it's as soft and pillowy as the name sounds. It's beautiful acoustic music, really, really, really soft vocals, but these lush arrangements that seem to kind of like almost fly out of the ashes. So I think the only thing I have to do is let this one play out, isn't it, David?
That was, before we go, that was just, I just want to compliment you on your word picture that you painted there. That was truly something, Ed. Now we can have a listen.
It's a different time, and the same place. Oh, and I'm going away with the serious attitude. Missing all the fun, and you're missing all the fun, and everybody's fun.
Lovely indeed. So here we are. We're here with Ben from Vipertime. How are you today, Ben?
Yeah, I'm all right. Kind of trying to find my lockdown rhythm. Mostly
how's it going so far?
Yeah, I'm baking a lot, man. Baking a lot, and I'm giving the bread to my neighbours to try and alleviate the fact that I'm also playing saxophone for 6 hours a day.
It's sort of like,
good,
here's my offering. Now I can make as much noise as I want.
Yeah. Actually, we got really lucky actually because we had students on one side, so they all left Leeds like a sinking ship as soon as lockdown came into place. So we've only got neighbours on one side. Yes, as long as I give them enough focaccia, then I'm sound.
Ooh, not even just like little bread, like good bread, focaccia. Like ooh.
Oh yeah, man, I've got time on my hands.
It's been a problem with like flour for you. I had a housemate who bakes, and she said there's been like a massive problem getting flour.
Yeah, it was like, you know, trying to get flour was harder than trying to get cocaine at the beginning of lockdown, I swear. I got a big, when I started baking, I was talking to my mum and said I couldn't get any flour. And then she sent me like the dodgiest package because she sent me a big bag of white powder in the post. Because she sent me up a load of flour to bake with.
Oh. Yeah. That would have been an unfortunate moment at the old depot. If
I know, right?
Accidentally gone through that.
But also, you know how it is. Like everyone started baking at the beginning of lockdown, and everyone's bored of it now. So now you can get flour in all the shops again.
So now it's just you. You're the last remaining baker in Leeds.
You know, you're like the last guy. It's just you and Paul Hollywood now, man.
Right, so enough of that. We're here to talk about some Vipertime tunes, and we should do that. So, do you want to give us a quick introduction to the first track that we're listening to today?
Yeah. So when Vipertime first started, it was a completely improvising group that I put together to play at this house party, and we did that gig, and it was really great. And then shortly after, we did a couple more, and they weren't nearly as good. And it kind of dawned on us, we're not, you know, we all love improvising, but we're not a totally improvising group. So me and Matthias, the bass player, got together to write a lot of music, and we were mostly listening to a lot of 1970s kind of North African funk and jazz, and a lot of post-punk. And
great combination.
This is a track of Matthias's that he wrote, which basically kind of slams those two together. This is called Tick, and it's from our album Shakedown.
When asked, you guys have said that Vipertime is a combination of spiritual jazz with like 60s psychedelia and garage, but you've also given us the post-punk and the North African jazz as well. We can hear like a massive dance influence coming in as well. Do you want to take us through anything like specific that you're influenced by, any specific artists, anything? And is there anything that you've been listening to as well in isolation that's really been influenced?
Yeah, so when we first started writing it, as I said, it was me and Matthias were like neck deep in the kind of Ethiopiques, these legendary compilations of Ethiopian funk and jazz. So we were initially really into that, and we were trying to write quite direct rip-offs of it. That's kind of what we thought we would play. Like we'd write our own versions of those kind of tunes. But then without really trying, as is always the case, as we started composing, it just pulled in from all our other influences, which included a lot of punk, a lot of spiritual jazz for sure. That kind of Detroit garage thing, you know. I was really into punk as a teenager, so that kind of Stooges, MC5 thing comes in. And then when I moved to Leeds, I got quite into the kind of post-punk history of Leeds, like Gang of Four and Delta 5. And that led us getting into kind of more of the kind of arty post-punk, like the Pop Group and the Fall and the Birthday Party, which are they're these punk bands who are, they're really well read, and they've got a set of aesthetics they really stick to, and they've got a message, and they're not afraid to pull in from other musical styles, which is kind of my favourite end of punk. I love the Ramones, but all these bands have got a bit more to say than the Ramones ever did.
I think you can sort of even look towards like the Clash in that sort of way, very much in terms of combining, especially world music. Joe Strummer was a huge hugely into world music, especially when he was doing his solo stuff like the Mescaleros and that.
That's it. Yeah, they were pulling a lot of dub. You know, like Paul Simon was really into dub, and then Mick got really into like hip hop when they went to New York. Yeah, they were an amazing exponent of that. And the same thing about having something to say. You know.
And it's so we wanted to talk a little bit as well about the musicality of this tune. It's got a great like harmony. It's like hypnotic. It's immediate. It's all these sort of big poncy words. And we were going to ask about like the sort of the compositional process behind a Vipertime tune, because obviously you guys don't really stick to any classic structure, anything like that. So what goes into a Vipertime tune? How do you sort of put one together?
Well, normally one of us will arrive at a rehearsal with maybe 1 or 2 riffs, and we'll kick it around as a group from there, and it tends to come together pretty quickly. They're not, in general, they're not complicated compositions. That's kind of not the vibe of the band. There's no chordal instrument in the band. There's no piano, there's no guitar. So we don't have to really think about chords or harmony that much. It's basically, you know, both drummers are playing a groove. Matthias is playing a line on the bass and I'm playing a line on the sax, and that's the bulk of it really. So if you turn up with 2 riffs and we kick them around a bit, and one of them fits nicely on the horn and one fits on bass, that's the bulk of a tune really. It's not a very detailed compositional process. I've been writing some other music recently, and that's me sat at the piano writing quite complex harmony and trying to write like a front line for 2 horns, and that's taking a lot more time than Vipertime does. We can kind of bring simple ideas, and we can jam, and we've been playing together in different ensembles for so many years that we really understand each other's playing. So we can kind of improvise and take risks, and it tends to work out.
And we wanted to talk a little bit about the production as well. So you made this in Eiger Studios.
That's right, yeah.
I've forgotten. I did have him in my notes. What was the gentleman's name?
Will Jackson.
Yes, Will Jackson who did it. And the production here is pretty inventive, pretty interesting. You got like extended reverberation bits and stuff towards the end. And we think we'll talk a little bit more about your live sound later when we talk about Shakedown. But we wanted to ask about where you see yourselves going in terms of recorded sound now that you've done the debut LP. Like, do you think they'll be more affected going forwards, or are you going to stick to that really sort of that Vipertime live sound?
Yeah, the first album does have quite a live sound. We recorded almost all of it live. There's almost no overdubs. Both drummers and the bass player are all in the same room. So and I was just through a pane of glass looking at them, so we had a really live feeling. And kind of didn't want to dilute that too much. Will's a really great engineer and producer. You know, he's worked with like Cribs and Kaiser Chiefs and Pigeon Detectives and all sorts. And he kind of grasped what we wanted very early on, and I don't know how to say this in a positive way. He was incredibly hands-off in a really good way. Like, he didn't really interfere. He knew what we wanted was quite simple, and just basically he made it as easy as possible for us to have a comfortable playing experience, and captured that. We did all the mixing and all the overdubs in one day, and it was mastered that evening. You know, it was a really quick kind of jazz process. But we've got some music in the bank that we've already recorded, and some more compositions ready that we'll record when we're legally allowed to be in the same room. But I do want to spend a little bit more time on the post-production this time. I think we could get it sounding a little rockier without that being a bad thing. I think it could be a little more distorted at times, a little kind of beefier. I want to put some more overdubs on it. I think last time we literally overdubbed. I played a bit of flute and we put some percussion on it, and that was really it. I think there's space for some guitar, some extra horns on this.
So all sorts of stuff. Just like
yeah, but this it still needs to keep that sound of being the live band, but there's also we have the opportunity to use the studio as a bit of a tool.
Yeah.
And expand that sound a little bit. Yeah.
We'll see. Well, it's the world is your oyster, after all.
Yeah, well, it depends how much money we've got to get in the studio, but we'll see. I'm doing some funding applications this afternoon, so
well,
that decides how many overdubs we can do. So this next one's a composition of mine called Shadrach, and this is exploring a bit more of that kind of spiritual jazz sound that you mentioned. And spiritual jazz is a bit of a weird term. It's a bit like world music, you know, it's one of those terms that's useful but you kind of know isn't correct. You know, calling something spiritual, it's like, really, what does that mean? We're kind of using it to label the influence of a certain kind of 60s and 70s sound of like impulse records, you know?
It's like when someone's... No, sorry, after you, Edward, go on.
I was one of those things that I know what it means when someone says it. Like, it harks back to like those Alice Coltrane things and Pharaoh.
100%, yeah.
But like, just you kind of just use it without actually thinking that it's probably a pretty vague way of describing something.
Yeah, 100%.
I always think of that like when someone describes themselves as spiritual, like it very much doesn't really mean all that much. Like,
yeah, man, that's a massive turn-off, isn't it? Get rid of the dream catchers. Yeah.
It's a good job I've got the camera pointed this way because I've got a dream catcher hung up just over there.
So I've got a big picture of Iggy Pop, so you know it's the opposite.
I'm sure he catches some dreams as well for you.
Yeah, he's crushed some dreams. Yeah.
So and we just wanted to. Oh no, absolutely. We just wanted to get. You mentioned it very very briefly, sort of the way that the band got together. You played at a party first, but I think when we've spoken before, you gave me a little bit more in depth into the sort of a last minute nature of that situation. I was hoping you could maybe regale us of that story here.
Yeah. So a friend of mine was putting together a big house party as a charity fundraiser, and asked my band, one of the other bands I play in, Mansion of Snakes, to play, which is a 10-piece kind of Afrobeat band. And I politely said no because there was no chance we or even without our gear we wouldn't have fitted in her basement, you know. Before we had drums and congas and four horns. So I said no, but I agreed to organise some music in lieu of that. But then I went on tour in Europe for, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks, and it completely left my mind until I got back to Leeds and got the phone call the night before the party asking what I was going to bring along. You know, asking what I'd organised. So I wouldn't say I panicked, but I realised there was a deadline. So I called around some musicians who I knew I could trust to create something immediate and who could improvise, but weren't straight jazz musicians, because I wanted it to be something a bit danceable. It was a house party. I didn't want to do a complete, a free jazz gig. That was the wrong vibe. And I'd always fancied doing something with 2 drummers. So I called up 3 musicians who I knew had been working with different African musicians. They'd been working in like the Leeds punk scene, and who were really good improvisers.
Do you want to give us real quick just a rundown of each of the guys?
Yeah. So this is actually a different lineup at this point.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So. I'll get to the current lineup in a little while. But
okay.
Yeah, so we did the house party gig, and it was really good fun. It was really intuitive and immediate and organic, and everyone danced, and we had a really good time. And then we did 2 other gigs, I think, shortly after that, and neither of them were that great. And I'm certain it's because we were subconsciously trying to replicate that first gig, which meant we weren't actually improvising in a real sense, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So after that, I was really disheartened by those 2 second gigs and was ready to sack it off. And then Matthias, the co-leader of the band, agreed that we should write some music instead. And we got together and wrote a short EP called All Our Heroes Are Dead that we just demoed like straight to tape with like 2 microphones, like really old school.
Nice.
And gigged that a little bit, and then the lineup settled. So it's the bassist is Matthias Reed, who's like one of my best mates, and we studied at Leeds College of Music together. And Matthias was playing classical guitar at college. And then I heard him play electric one day, and he sounded like Hendrix. And we got really close after that. And I'd been studying jazz for 3 years, and he'd been studying classical music. And we had a really good summer just after we graduated, where we just went to loads of punk gigs. We started a short-lived punk band that only played at house parties. And we kind of
what was the name of that band?
I think it was called Slut Puppies. I played guitar and Matthias was on drums. It wasn't great. But it was a detox from that, like the claustrophobia of that last year of studying, being in a practice room by yourself for 6 hours a day.
Yeah.
And then we started playing in other people's bands for years before we actually got to Vipertime. Now we kind of co-lead this together and write all the music together. And then we've got 2 drummers. So we've got Charlie Grimwood, who also plays in Mansion of Snakes. And we've got Luke Reddin-Williams, who plays in the Mercury Award nominated Roller Trio.
Does he make you say the Mercury Award bit every single time?
No, he cringes. No, I do it to make him uncomfortable. And he also plays in a band called World Service Project with me. Yeah.
So you guys are all over the shop. You guys are...
Well, yeah, I wish it was the case, but unfortunately Vipertime doesn't pay the bills. So we all do a lot of different projects, and we all tour pretty relentlessly, do bits of teaching. I've been working part-time at an indie record label for the past 5 years. I've only just stopped, just because I was touring so much I couldn't hold the job down.
What a shame.
I know, yeah. Just in time for all touring to stop, which is perfect.
Oh no, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man. I mean, so when you're in the introduction for this tune, where you're talking about spiritual jazz, we picked up on that, and we've like noticed a lot of stuff been listened to at the moment, like the Shabaka and the Ancestors stuff that's been coming out, the Moses Boyd stuff as well that came out earlier this year. It's like the spiritual jazz thing's almost coming back round at the moment. And what do you think it is that's drawing you to this sound, like drawing you to the 70s spiritual jazz sound?
And maybe drawing other people to it as well.
And drawing others to it. Do you think there's a bit of a resurgence of it going on at the moment?
Well, there definitely is. Especially for that, Alice Coltrane and Pharaoh particularly seem to be a massive influence on what's happening in this kind of southeast London scene. And I think it's less like statistically dense than a lot of other jazz, like bebop and stuff. There's a lot going on, and it's very dense and very complicated. And spiritual jazz kind of shed a lot of that, and it's more about atmosphere and texture. And you're kind of painting on a wider canvas and painting with wider strokes as well. It's I think that more kind of, how should I put it, that wider expression and a focus on emotion and texture makes it a bit more accessible.
We're going to play our final tune now. This is called Shakedown. Fuck Boris Johnson.
So we recently released a new EP, which was recorded live at Smugglers Festival at the end of last summer, which is an amazing festival down near the Kent coast in the southeast. If it's not your favourite festival, it should be. It's the best. It was supposed to be the 10th anniversary this year, but I doubt it's probably not going to happen. But it's about maybe 1,000 people in this little forest, and there's no sponsors. It's super homegrown. Like all the stages are bespoke built, all the beers brewed down the road, all the food's super local, and yet they punch like massively above their weight in what kind of bands they can pull in. Like in the last few years, they've had like Deerhoof, Kikagaku Moyo, Melt Yourself Down, Soccer 96, a BBO Sound Machine, This Is the Kit, like really heavy stuff, and you can see him in this really intimate, amazing space. So it was really great to go and play there. And we also had the dream experience where you don't realise you're being recorded until afterwards.
Oh yeah, we spoke to Jeremy Sassoon, who said he accidentally made his first album. He just wanted one tune, and then he realised, like, he said the same thing as, like, I think what you're gonna get at is that if anyone tells you you're gonna record a live album, you're gonna fuck it up.
Well, you perform in a different way for sure. I think we'd just driven down from Leeds that afternoon, which is, it was like 6 hours in the car with, and then we got out and lugged our drum kits across the field and everything. So getting on stage, having a pint and getting on stage was a really cathartic experience. We were really like sweating out some stuff, The sun was just setting through the trees. It was a really great crowd. And then afterwards we found out we'd been recorded. So we kind of just kept that in the bank. We weren't quite sure what to do with it. And then we worked quite closely with Hyde Park Book Club in Leeds, which is a venue and a cafe and an art space. They've been really helping us to release our records. And Jack Simpson, who owns the book club, have been putting together some work for a really great charity called Solidaritech, who take kind of old and disused iPhones and tablets and Macs and refurbish them and then give them to asylum seekers who are settling in this country. We were chatting about this just as I was talking to him about us having this live recording. So he suggested we put it out as an EP, as a Bandcamp exclusive, and then donate all the proceeds to this charity, which is what we did. So we released this about, how long ago? Maybe a month ago? Time is an illusion now, it's hard to tell. And that's still available as technically it's a free download, and then you can donate whatever you want. And we were really excited about the recording. It sounds super live and aggressive and vibrant. And we get to support a really good charity at the same time.
I know you said Melt Yourself Down, and that instantly listening to it, like this live one, it reminded me of that band. And
thank you.
The atmosphere on the live stuff is like, especially on that live recording, is it's like that extra gear, isn't it? It's it's got like a carnivalesque buzz to it. I wrote in the question actually. And
very good.
Do you think there's a massive contrast between your live show and the records? Do you think, like, if people really want to hear like the real Vipertime, they've got to come down and watch it live?
I wouldn't choose to say that, but it's probably true. Yeah. I think it's very hard to capture that level of aggression and kind of immediacy in the studio. You're not getting anything back from the crowd, so it took me a long time to learn that you have to kind of over exaggerate in the studio to get the same amount of feeling and expression across. And it's definitely something I want to think about for the next record, is how we can capture a bit more violence.
Maybe get some we're going to be like socially distancing anyway, so get some like cardboard cutouts of people maybe, and just like arrange them at the back of the studio.
Or just do something. We need to get like, have you read those stories about when the Clash were recording London Calling?
No, I don't think
I can't remember the producer's name now. I've totally gone blank. He produced their first LP. Then Sandy Pearlman from Blue Oyster Cult produced their second one in the States. And they went from being this like really live punk band to being a real rock group, and they multi-tracked all the guitars, and it became much more regimented. And I still think it's a great record, but it's a different sound. But then for London Calling, they had this producer, and I can't believe I've forgotten his name, but he used to come in the studio and like throw chairs about, like in the live room when they were playing, and like smash stuff up.
Yeah.
And like throw wine bottles at them when they were playing to try and get that live feeling.
It was Guy Stevens.
That's it, Guy Stevens, man. Yeah, absolute nut job.
I wasn't just on my phone during that conversation. Not that anyone can see me anyway because they're listening. But.
You've just outed yourself there.
But we're going to be working with Will Jackson again, and we love him, and he's an absolute wizard in the studio. But I can't see him throwing anything at us.
Do you think you need that sort of like hype man-esque violent figure then in the studio?
Yeah, we need to get like Violent Bez.
Yeah, I was thinking that.
Violent Bez is a great name for a record as well.
I've been listening to a lot of Factory records since lockdown, actually. Listening to a lot of Happy Mondays.
I've been I've never been a huge, like, I like the Happy Mondays a lot. I've never really ventured too far into it, but I've been listening to a lot of Girotti Column.
No.
Ooh. It's not often that I get to be the guy that does this, but yeah, Girotti Column is this one guy. I think his name's Vinny Riley. He makes these amazing, beautiful like guitar and drums atmospheric tune. I'll send you something later.
Is it on Factory?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, he was one of the. He made a deal with Tony Wilson in classic Tony Wilson fashion.
I was about to say deal's a strong word.
Yeah, one of those. And so it's quite hard to get hold of some of his stuff now. I believe he ended up with not a lot of money after Peter Hook took everything over. But
yeah. I don't think there was any money knocking around at any point, was there? Maybe briefly, just before Hacienda was built.
Cool. We got a bit of a digression.
Yeah,
there.
sorry, you can edit that out.
It's like we've noticed as it's gone on, these are just like great music chats, to be honest.
It's nice during this lockdown period to get to talk to people who share the same passions as you do, and
it's just nice to talk to people.
That's good. So I think we're all about done with all the tunes. Thank you so much for chatting to us and stuff. Before we end our old interview and send us each back into the deep dark lockdown holes from whence we came, do you just want to tell everyone? Just reiterate, where we can find this charity EP, where we can find the rest of the stuff that you guys are doing, and just where we can follow you if we want to.
Yeah, of course. So we are Vipertime, and we are all over the internet in all the social medias, as well as all your streaming services. We released an album almost exactly 12 months ago called Shakedown, which you can find everywhere, and you can order vinyl from Bandcamp, which I will completely sanitize before sending to you, and I'll use a shrink-wrapped copy and everything, so it'll be easy to wipe down. And if you go to Bandcamp, you can find our first really early demo EP there, which isn't available anywhere else, and you can also find our new charity EP live at Smugglers Festival to support the charity Solidaritech, and that's there as a pay-as-you-feel download, so you can donate whatever you feel you want to give.
Amazing. I would highly recommend doing so as well, because we would have been jibber jabbering over the tracks, but this is one of the most fun I've had. Opening up a folder of tunes someone sent you and just being blown away by them, man. They're like, it's really cool.
Thank you very much.
And thank you very much. So
thanks for having me. It was fun.
Cool. Well, hopefully we'll get to see you again at Matt and Phreds very soon, or perhaps down at Smugglers Bounty.
Who knows?
Who knows?
Yeah, we were supposed to be on tour through June. I booked a whole UK tour. We had some music to release, but that's going to be on hold for a little while. Maybe next year.
Eh?
Hopefully, you'll be seeing Vipertime in 2021 in a city near you.
All right, thanks, Ben.
Thanks very much.
Lovely
indeed. You know what, Ed? It's just, I feel like we were chatting to a kindred spirit there. It's just such a lovely conversation to have.
It went in all different directions, didn't it? But there were some very beautiful answers that really took me aback and made me think about the way we were listening to the tunes. I think I'm gonna have Vipertime on for the next week.
At least the next week. And I think it's good weather for this kind of music as well at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, that party carnival vibe. I mean, obviously the socially distanced carnival needs some bigger streets, but yeah, I think
we can do that. We can go and have a party. But before we go and have a party, first we have to end our show.
It's that sad time, isn't it, where if you're listening to this in the sun, you can, wipe the tears off and go get some more ice in your glass, in your garden, obviously. Yeah. But we do have to say goodbye. And with that, there are thank yous to say, aren't there, David?
There are. But first, I'd like to talk about the email address.
Keep going, man. Keep going. Tell everyone about the email address. I've jumped the gun, but we got there.
You have jumped the gun, mate. You have. But we'll soldier on through if we can. So, if you've enjoyed these inane ramblings and this pure professionalism, and you want to talk to us about it,
and this kind of riff-raff of a format, then
this ending that's just getting more and more confused, and then please do send us an email at speakeasy@mattandphreds.com, and that's Phreds with a PH, and just rip us to pieces, because this outro is getting worse and worse by the second.
And if you like what you've heard, if you're still listening, then you can find it at the rest of the podcast episodes. That's what it is. You can find them at buzzsprout.com/speakeasy. You can find us on the Matt and Phreds website at mattandphreds.com/podcast. You can also find us on Spotify. You can find us on Apple Music. And yeah, you can find another 8 episodes just like this.
I think that this one gets a bit more off the rails perhaps than some of the others. The other ones might be a little bit more held together than this one. And now, Ed, you can do the thank yous.
You'll go first.
It is my go first, so I'd like to say thank you to Claire Turner for doing the intro for us and giving us this opportunity. She may be regretting that now. I'd like to say thank you to Will Mackenzie for the gorgeous jazz you hear in between the tracks.
I'd like to say thank you to Blanket Fort, Matthew Fortunati, all the way. He's over in Italy at the moment, but he usually resides in Manchester. He's looking after his parents during lockdown. What a saint.
What a guy.
For giving us our local recommended track, It's Going Nowhere by Blanket Fort.
Speaking of going nowhere, it's about time for us to wrap up. But first, I would like to give a huge, hearty, groovy thank you to Ben from Vipertime for having a chat with us and for putting up with our terrible banter.
And I'd like to thank you guys for coming this far. If you're listening to me speak right now, it means you've put up with the terrible banter for around circa 25 to 30 minutes. And you're going to be here again next week, aren't you? Because you know you love it. It's a great show.
And with that, I think we should just start the fade out.
Start the fade out. It's going down. It's going to be a fade.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.